welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Ball Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Reno, alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Dan, Thursday evening. It's been a little bit, and that's all me. But we are back here on the Top Ball Talk podcast. Dan, how is your week going? First off, and then we hit Thursday.
Hey, it's been a really busy week. I'm glad to be back on. Harrison couldn't find the reason to stand me up today, so we agreed to do the show. My man's busy. He's growing up on us, getting into college. Congratulations, buddy.
Thank you, man. We're in a new place. As you can see, the decoration's a little bit different. You're not looking at a purely just blank white wall anymore. You're looking at a Georgia flag in the back, and shout out the Kansas State University flag over there. As I try to cover up the bed over there, so you don't see the living area. But we are not going to focus on that today. We got to talk about some football. It's been a while since I talked some football. It's kind of unplugged as I had to mess with all the moving process and start getting with classes. So it was nice to be plugged back in to all of it. So let's get the show on the road because, we don't like to go over that 30 to 45 minute mark anymore because we know as the show gets longer, the less you pay attention. So let's get right into it. Dan, there's been a lot to go down over the last few weeks, and we will get to some of the meaty stuff, some of the great stuff in a little bit. But first off, let's go with some let's get into the hot topics of the week. We got 2 this week. Actually, no, we have 3. I did not put them on the show notes. That is on me. But first off, Dan, does the AP poll need to be replaced? If so, should the CFP poll be the only rankings that matter?
So I wouldn't say it needs to be replaced. It just needs to be done away with, because if it's not going to matter, if it's not going to count for anything, what's the point of having it, right? It's like, these tiny little websites that rank these kids and say, oh, so-and-so is the number 1 player in the country. Well, if you're not reporting it, if it doesn't matter, if it doesn't equate to anything, what's the point of having it? It's just fluff. It's just to drive conversations and sell newspapers. Nobody buys newspapers. So I don't understand the point of the AP poll anymore. It literally means nothing to no one. So I don't know why we have it, and I don't think we need to have it. And should the coaches necessarily drive who's doing what? No, not necessarily, because the coaches don't pay attention. They're only concerned about their team. It's some SID is the guy who's filling it out. I don't know necessarily who is the person, and I guess it has to be the committee, right? I mean, I think the committee should do the top 25 because they're the people who are getting paid to be dialed into it. And if they're ultimately going to select who's going to be in the playoff anyway, then it only makes sense that they're doing it. So that's my opinion, but what's yours?
I think it does need to be dropped. I wouldn't mind to see the coaches poll dropped. I know the coaches like to have their voice in things, but like Dan said, it's usually the SID guy, the head of the SID department for each program that's filling the thing out. So I say you do away with both because why not have, all 15 to really it's 17 weeks of the AP poll, because you got the preseason poll, then you got the week 0 poll, and then you got another poll in week 1. But, let's do away with it. I think it's outdated. I think we're done with. Yes, it's great for the press to have their opinion. I know there's going to be a lot of First Amendment college football, press members out there saying, oh, you can't do that. How are you a member of the media if you don't want your voice heard? Well, I don't have a voice at the table. And frankly, not a lot of us do. There's a very, very select minority that do have a voice when it comes to the AP people. So yes, I agree with Dan. I say we get rid of this poll. I think we go strictly off of the people, like Dan said, that are dialed in 24/7. Because why not? Why not hear where the standings are? I know the preseason polls don't really matter at all because it's not where you start, it's where you finish, as we've seen on multiple occasions. But Dan, with the second question of the day, should college football allow joint practices between 2 programs like we see in the NFL? I know there's been some heat caught towards, some joint practices in the NFL because there's a lot of brawls breaking out in practices. But Dan, would you like to see some joint practices in college football?
Absolutely. If the coaches want to do it, I don't see why that's an issue. I have zero idea why they're not allowed. I actually don't know technically that they're not allowed. I don't know if there's a rule that says you're not allowed to have joint practices. I just know it's not typically done. But yeah, listen, if the coaches want to have a joint practice, why not? High schools can do it. Youth groups can do it. NFL teams can do it. I don't see a downside to it. Like if Georgia wants to have a scrimmage with a team that they know that they're not going to play and I'm just throwing something out there like UAB or something. And I'm not saying they would do it. Hell, it doesn't even make sense to do it. Or Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State wanted to come over and have a little joint practice. I don't see why there would be I don't see how that could be negative if they want to do it. I don't know the variables involved that would make that something. I don't know, Harrison. I don't know why it's not allowed. Maybe you can explain why it's not allowed. And my short answer is hell yeah, like go do it.
I would absolutely love to see it. I don't really know the ins and outs of why it's not allowed. And I don't, like Dan said, I don't even know if it's not, like, if there's a rule stating you can't do it. Because, I mean, who wouldn't want to see Georgia go have a joint practices in the spring and maybe have, instead of having your inter-squad scrimmage, you get, not only that, but you get kind of like a Georgia versus a Kennesaw State scrimmage. Get some good on good against not only yourselves, but against other people. And I guess at the end of the day, the reason I see probably why it's not happening is because, football coaches are scared of their stuff getting stolen. Georgia doesn't want Alabama stealing their stuff. You don't want to hold spring practice with the team and then, come the summer, maybe one of your opponents steal one of the coaches and they get all the insight into what you're doing. They are known to be cautious when it comes to sharing information about their football teams. That is why coach speak is a thing, because they don't want the other coaches finding out the truths about whatever they're talking about. So, yeah, I think it would be awesome to see. Now, granted, at a program like Georgia, you're not going to see or hear much about a joint practice because, that's just, they don't let the media in for that long. And when they're in there, to watch practices, it's like a 15-minute window from what I've heard. So, with Georgia, I don't think Georgia would allow much peeking behind the curtain into that. But yeah, definitely. I think it would be awesome. I think it would make football teams much better if you have a joint practice, because instead of practicing with each other, between, good on each side and the tendencies, I've played sports before. Dan, you played sports before. Dan, how many times when you're scrimmaging did you hear the play call and you're like, oh, I know what's coming?
100%. And everybody does that.
Yeah, so why not change some things up, get some new programs in there, and kind of dice some things up. But Dan, I want to go to you.
Let me add one more thing on that. Like, even if you didn't want it to happen during the fall camp, okay, maybe I understand that, whatever. But why not for spring, where your spring game could be against somebody else? But I guess the downside of that would be that you're taking reps away from your own kids, because if you have your inter squad spring game, there's a lot of guys that are getting opportunities. Maybe that would be a downside. But yeah, with joint practices, I think 100% should happen. So go ahead. What's your surprise hot topic of the week? Because I don't know what it is.
This is the one you mentioned in text message. I forgot to put in the notes.
Okay.
Here's the big question of the week. Here's the big one.
Oh.
Can you watch a game without choosing a team to root for?
Oh, the answer to that is hell no. And I don't know why. And I have had this conversation with friends before, and apparently I'm weird. But when I watch a game, within a minute or two of watching a game, I have decided to root for one team or the other. And it doesn't matter what it is, Harrison. I've watched cornhole on ESPN before, and within 2 minutes, I'm pulling for one of the two idiots that are throwing beanbags. I don't know what it is about me, and maybe this says more about me than anybody else. And I don't know if the guys are still in our comments, but if you are, chime in, because I cannot watch a game without picking a side. And I'm not saying that I'm like all of a sudden come downstairs and face paint where I'm rooting for a team like that. But I'll develop a rooting interest within about 2 minutes and start pulling for one team or the other. And like I said, maybe not to the extent where I'm like, come on, but I'll be like, yeah, let's go. I don't know. Maybe it says more about me than anybody else. Maybe I'm just too hyper competitive. I don't know. But what say you, sir?
I see where you're getting at. But me personally, there is nothing better than watching a football game when you don't have an interest in it at all. Just sitting back and kind of saying, hey, I don't have a dog in the fight type deal. And just sitting there and be like, okay, cool. Let's watch some good football. Let's look at it, from a 13,000 feet perspective instead of sitting it on the ground and saying, hey, I want A&M to beat Alabama. Now look, I'm not going to lie to y'all. I did want A&M to beat Alabama because I wanted to see the chaos ensue around college football when Alabama did get defeated in the regular season. Now, the Georgia fans probably don't want to hear that because we all know what happened in this championship game. I wish that podcast. I wish we had this all going back during the season last year because I think it would have been a special season. But hey, we're here for maybe another repeat. We don't know what George is going to do, but Dan, I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I think some of the best football games I've watched is the ones where I don't have a rooting interest. I'm not saying that, like Dan says, you're not going to come out and when we say rooting, you're not coming down in full face paint, full gear. I'm a Florida Gator today. No. We're talking about, okay, Texas A&M is playing Florida. Well, most Georgia fans are going to root for Texas A&M. Or most Georgia fans are going to root for Texas A&M because they don't want to see Florida win, type deal. I don't think you need to root for a team to watch good football because good football should be, at the end of the day, it should be good no matter what, whether you're rooting for them or not. So I'm going to disagree with Dan on that one today. And with that, we are going to move on. Dang, I think we're about 11 minutes in. Yeah, almost 12 minutes into Dan's rant of the week. I texted Dan today. I said, Dan, there are two topics I want to hear from you. This is not, and I quote, there's a little bit more lengthy conversation. And Dan, I thought I knew what Dan was going to talk about, but wanted to confirm. And then the other one, I hit him up and said, Dan, I need this from you. If there's one team in college football that's pissing you off because they're getting all this hype, I need you to rant about them. So Dan, I'm going to kick it over to you for your rants of the week.
All right, I will do my rants, but I do want you to chime in, so don't completely mentally check out on me. All right, so the first one is the Falcons draft. All right, so now we're having an opportunity to see or not see, in one particular instance, the guys who the Falcons have drafted. So listen, I don't care what anybody tells you. The Falcons don't draft UGA players. That's a damn fact. And they're like, oh, well, maybe they just don't fit. Okay, well, I went into this draft saying with that first pick that they had at number 8, I wanted a defensive player. So what they do is they go out and get the cream puff Drake London, who, he's tearing up camp. Psst, side note, your team is trash, so it's not hard to do. Well, now all of a sudden he's a little banged up. He can't play. He gets hurt in the first preseason game, can't play anymore. And, the one pick I did like was the defensive player that they took at number 38. And I'm not going to even try to say his name, but the edge rusher out of Penn State. But my point was, I wanted to build up that defense with the first pick. We didn't do that. We passed up a bunch of different guys. Jordan Davis looks like an absolute freak. And, there was a lot of scouts out there who are like, Jordan Davis makes a hell of a lot of sense on this defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons right next to Grady Jarrett. It would finally take some pressure off of him. It would take all the pressure off of those linebackers to where they could actually work in space. No, we ain't going to do that. We're going to go get a wide receiver because, for God's sakes, our defense is trash. So why the hell would we want to upgrade it? I don't know. And then they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do in the second round at number 58. We're going to get cute. We're going to get really cute. We're going to take this little fast white kid out of Montana State named Troy Anderson. He's the fastest linebacker I've ever seen in my life. Well, maybe because he hadn't played linebacker. He's a damn quarterback and whatever, but we're going to put him at linebacker. And we're not going to take a tackling machine like, I don't know, guy wore number 17. I think he wore number 17 at Georgia and was one of the best linebackers to come through our program in a long damn time. But, that's just not on the Falcons. There are a lot of teams that decided that Nakobe Dean couldn't play football. Well, he's making a lot of people look really, really stupid right now. And he's playing behind this monster of a defensive tackle named Jordan Davis, who, we didn't need him here in Atlanta. It's just carving freaking paths for linebackers to go make tackles. That's just, hey, but we took Desmond Ridder in the third round, and he actually looks halfway decent. Too bad he doesn't have a freaking offensive line to block for his ass, because that would make sense, right? Maybe in that first pick at number 8, we should have taken a tackle because there were two on the board that we could have taken. No, I am so over the Atlanta Falcons trying to be smarter than everybody in the room. And when I saw the list that Troy Anderson was on the not travel, not dress list because who knows why, I laughed my ass off, especially when I saw Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean basically ripping Zach Wilson's knee apart. So, I know you're not a Falcons fan, but I hate the Falcons. So say something else so I can catch my breath.
Well, I'm going to, you're putting me in a bad position here because I'm gonna catch heat from Jonathan Williams all up in our group chat talking about Trayvon Diggs getting toasted, burned and turned in the Cowboys training camp. But yeah, I mean, I'm with Dan on this one. Passing on to Kobe Dean, and it's not just Dan's franchise. My fan franchise, the Dallas Cowboys, passing to Kobe Dean as well. And what's worse for me, Dan, as he goes to probably the second best rival and the biggest challenger to the Cowboys this year in defending their NFC East title, the Philadelphia Eagles, a franchise I cannot stand at all to watch. It is like watching. They are to the Cowboys. They are the Florida of the NFL. They just talk. And really, they don't do anything. They haven't done anything other than win the Super Bowl back a few years ago. But since then, they haven't done anything. But what's worse for y'all, Dan? What's worse? When I look at it, you could have had a Jordan Davis. You could have had a George Pickens in round 2. Then you could have had on top of it Nakobe Dean. Now, yes, I liked the Ritter pick. I think Ritter looked exceptional. I thought there's a lot of potential in that. I do like where you're going at quarterback. I like the idea of having a young QB learn behind a veteran like Marcus Mariota. I know Mariota hasn't been the most successful of quarterbacks in the pros, but I think he's serviceable. I think he can do a job. So I don't mind that. But you're telling me, someone who's covered Georgia, someone who's watched the incredible plays that the defense made last year, and then combine George Pickens with it, they would have made the Falcons better. 100%. All three of those guys would have made the Falcons better.
The Falcons literally, with their 3 picks, without moving, without doing anything, they literally could have taken all 3. Now, I'm not saying I mean, I don't know that any team has ever taken 3 straight players out of one school. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a smart thing to do. And granted, it's working out where if you had done that, you might have looked really, really smart. But, when you say every team passed on Nakobe Dean twice or whatever, that's true, right? But a lot of those teams didn't draft a middle linebacker. So it's hard to, you can't put it on a team who took a wide receiver or a team that took a safety or a team because those teams obviously were not looking for that position. The indictment for the Falcons is you were looking for that position and you decided to take a guy who played freaking quarterback to play middle linebacker. Like, you are stupid. And how dare you criticize an NFL GM, or how dare you criticize an NFL head coach because you don't know as much as them. Well, when everybody told you pre-draft exactly what these players were, and then you skip them and take other players, and now you're the one that looks foolish. So this isn't hindsight 2020 where we were saying something else and now we're saying you look stupid. Is we told you you're going to be stupid if you don't do this. They didn't do it, and now they look stupid. And I mean, of course, there's plenty of time it could change, but they look stupid, and I am so done with the Falcons right now. Anyway, moving on to my second rant of the week. You called or text, or I don't remember. I think, but we had a conversation, and you asked me, "Is there a team that's getting too much hype?" And I immediately I was like, A&M. Immediately A&M. For A&M's not going to even win their freaking side of the division. And for me, it comes back to Jimbo. Okay. Jimbo inherited a program at Florida State where you literally couldn't F that up. I mean, he tried. I mean, his quarterback out here stealing crab legs and, dressing out for a game that he's suspended for, and the coach has to pull him off the field. Like, could you imagine? Everybody, close your eyes and play fairy tale with me, okay? Imagine Stetson Bennett gets suspended for a game. Okay, everybody, just close your eyes. Imagine this. Stetson Bennett gets suspended for a game because he got a free tattoo because he's a Steakwebian now, right? So he gets a free tattoo, and Kirby says you're suspended for the game. Is there any chance in hell that kid makes it out of the locker room in full pads to start warming up with his team? There's no way. Kirby would beat him with an inch of his life verbally. Probably not physically. I don't think Kirby would hit a kid, but it's a lack of control. Jimbo's never has control. He's not an elite coach. He is not elite. I don't like anything about Jimbo, but they are just heaving all this praise on top of A&M for what? What have they done? I mean, who's their quarterback? Is it Calzada? Is that who is going to be the quarterback this year?
No, crap, I'm blanking on his name. The kid that transferred from LSU. Their starting quarterback last
Oh,
year for LSU, Max Johnson.
Max Johnson, who wasn't good enough to start in the SEC. Thank you very much, Harrison. So, what makes you think that he's going to go from LSU and he couldn't win the job there to go over to Texas A&M, who's supposed to be a better team? So, you're going to tell me on a lesser team he can't win, but on a better team he's going to like? I don't buy it, and I'm not trying to pick on Max Johnson. He's a local kid. I hope he does extremely well. This is not aimed at him, but I'm saying they have questions. They had this unbelievable recruiting class, right? That we know they bought. Apparently, a lot of those kids aren't real happy right now, but I'm not going to go into details because Harrison will get mad at me. But everybody's throwing all this praise at A&M for what? For what? Like, you had one good recruiting class? Okay. Well, guess what? A lot of those kids are not playing this year. So what the hell's the point? What are we talking about? I don't understand even what we're talking about. Like, you don't. I could understand if they had a Matt Corral coming back at quarterback. I mean, that kid was a difference maker at Ole Miss. And, if they had a player of that magnitude, I would 100% get it. But I don't understand the amount of hype and praise that A&M is getting and is based on what? If somebody could please tell me what it's based on, maybe I'm just out of the loop too much and I just don't understand. But it's a joke to me.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the records over the past few years. I don't have them put up right in front of me, but they're
You've already gone over them.
Yeah, on average, they're an 8-4 team. That's what they are. That's what their program is. They haven't won 10 games since Johnny Manziel was there. Johnny Manziel. You know how long ago it's been since Johnny Manziel played football, college football, Dan? It's been almost 10 years, if not 10 years exactly. Almost 10 years. They haven't won 10 games since then. So I'm not buying the hype like Dan. And I was actually really interested because I don't know if Dan's been seeing some of the same things that I've seen. But when I hit Dan up, the program that I thought Dan was going to say was Florida, because I've seen Florida all up in the mentions, all up in everybody's mentions, talking about how good they are. But also, because they got that little recruiting streak going on the trail, Dan. They got all these commits. Billy Bags is back, baby. Billy Bags is back, as they call him, Billy Bags. Dan, I also, real quick, before we do move on, I want to get your take. Did you see, I think it was the SEC Network, did you see the schedule prediction for Kentucky?
I saw that while I was at Kansas scrimmage. Go ahead. Yes, I saw it.
I want to get your thoughts on that because there was something wrong with that schedule prediction. It popped out like a sore to me.
Yeah, they're going to lose to Tennessee, but beat Georgia the following week. Right. I mean, listen, Harrison, you're in the business. You've been here long enough. I know you're younger than most people, but you know exactly what that is. That's clicks and wanting attention. That's all that is. Like, you have to understand, and I'm not, I promise I'm not trying to talk down to you here. I'm not talking down to the listeners. Sometimes you have to step back and just understand what it is. They're trying to drive traffic. That's all that is. It's look at me, say something. And some people are better at it than others. I mean, they win, Harrison, because what are we doing? We're talking about it right now, right? So they win. Some people are better than others. It's you give a lot of honest opinions. You give a lot of truthful and smart analysis, but then you always throw in something. You got to throw in that curveball. That's something to get people going. So for it wasn't Canal. Who was it who was doing the breakdown, the schedule breakdown? What ESPN person was it?
I don't even remember. I mean, I just saw the screenshot. I haven't watched
So
the segment.
yeah, it was one of the ESPN people, and all it was he went down there, so they're going to lose to Tennessee. Hey, that could 100% happen, and then they're going to beat Georgia, right? If they said that they're going to beat Tennessee and lose to Georgia, that's a throwaway segment, Harrison. So that doesn't even move the needle for me. Chris Doring, thank you, Jonathan. It's Chris Doring, who's a Florida guy. Go figure. But listen, yeah, I'm not mad at Florida. I have a personal connection through a friend to Napier, who I thought Napier was going to be a home run hire if they would have done it at Auburn, which made perfect sense. So I actually want to see the guy do well, just not when they play us. So and I just hate Florida people so much that I have so many of them blocked. I don't even see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Kentucky prediction was bad, and it came at a time where you had Coach Calipari, the Kentucky basketball coach, taking out his little Nerf gun and shooting shots over at Mark Stoops, which is the funniest thing I've seen. I don't know why you're talking down on another program in your own university. Was the dumbest thing Coach Calipari did. Now I know the politics behind it. He wants the attention back on his basketball program, but at the same time, why are you going to put the other program down? You're at the same school, dude. That's not cool. Not cool at all.
You,
If Kirby Smart did that to Mike White's basketball program, I don't know if you would get as much heat for it at Georgia. But I mean, the other way, if the shoe was on Kirby Smart, I mean, it's just not cool. There would still be backlash.
well, so you also have to understand who said it. Coach Calipari is probably one of the biggest egomaniacs in the world. He like when Calipari comes to visit, his ego enters way before he does. It's that big. So there probably wasn't any ill intent, but he just does not think about what he says, and he doesn't really care. And the reason that there was so much backlash is because so many people respect the job that Stoops has done at Kentucky. You have to understand that Kentucky is a program that struggles to win and compete consistently. And Stoops has literally gone in there and done the dirty work and worked very, very hard to make that a very respectable program. And the reason there was so much backlash is because people like him so much. And what Calipari did a lot of damage to the efforts that he's put in, right? So, would there be the same backlash for Mike White? Absolutely not, because he doesn't have that equity, right? Imagine like Fox, when Fox was at Georgia, right? Him and Mark Richt were best buddies. And Fox got let go because they didn't get over the hump or whatever. But Fox was actually a very successful basketball coach, and he had been there for quite a while, and he put in a lot of work. And it would have been the equivalent of Mark Richt coming out and saying, well, I don't care that, that Mark Fox is working very hard because we're a football school and it doesn't matter. Right. So that's the equivalent, but you have to just understand who Calipari is. And Calipari does not think about other people. And in Calipari's world, there is no one other than Calipari. So it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. We got a little off track there, and that's on me. And not really. I'm not apologizing for it because it's stuff I want to talk about, and I didn't put it on the show notes because I wasn't honestly thinking about it. But that is all really good stuff that's been going down since we've been gone. But with that being said, for our headline topic of the week, Dan, we talked about him a little bit earlier. We didn't go really in depth into him, but it's George
that was on
Pickens.
purpose. I didn't want to step all over you.
No. You're not stepping on me. You're not stepping on anything. I wouldn't say we're avoiding it, but we're saving it for later. We're saving our best for last. You don't throw that, you don't throw that home run punch until you got someone on the ropes. So here it is. George Pickens stealing the show in the NFL preseason. He's been dubbed the NFL young boy, named after a rapper, modern times rapper. So this is going to be, he's going to be fun to watch. I think we all knew that coming out of college. Even though he had that knee injury last spring, we knew George Pickens was going to be George Pickens, in some shape or form when he got to the pros. And he's proven everybody right. Now, I'm not going to argue the fact that, he dropped in the first round. I definitely, he had a knee injury. He only played in 4 games last year. I see why he dropped. But there were also some really, really, really good receivers ahead of him that went ahead of him. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, despite the ACL tear, all really good receivers, all with different skill sets. George Pickens. Now, Pickens, different deal. I think Pickens is going to be the home run. Sorry, Dan. This is a very popular take. I'm sorry. He's going to be a home run. Shocker, right? I think he's probably going to be, out of all the year one receivers, I think Pickens is going to have the best year. What say you?
As long as he can stay healthy, I think you could have made an argument going into the draft. Had he not been injured, he would have been the number one receiver taken. Now, the one thing that I would say is that Chris Olave is a much better route runner, but George Pickens is a much better athlete. And that I don't think George is as polished as some of the other guys, but I think George has more talent and athleticism than a lot of the other guys. And I think he has a chance to be an absolute freak. It's actually kind of funny and ironic that he's on the same team as Chase Claypool, because Chase Claypool was extremely overlooked coming out of Notre Dame, and he had a hell of a first year and second year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We were talking in our group chat the other day, and I don't remember if it was Jonathan or Jeremiah, so I'll just give them both credit. But one of the two of them said if they can figure out somebody to throw them the damn ball, then they're in great shape. And I wholeheartedly agree. That is two awesome wide receivers that you have there in Claypool and Pickens. And all these other teams could have had them, and there were plenty of wide receivers that went. And I mean, the Falcons guy, Drake London, right? He's made a couple of nice catches during practice. He's made some flash plays, but he's not overly athletic. He's not extremely fast. He's not, George Pickens' catch radius is bigger than most wide receivers, not because of his length of his arms or his hands, is his explosiveness and his body control. He's able to contort and do a lot of things that other guys can't do. And I'm just telling you, this kid is going to be an absolute freak, barring any type of health issues. And the other issue that you have to address is their quarterback play is not going to be great. And if it's not going to be great, then it's going to limit his opportunities. But if you were to put him with Tom Brady, for example, that mean the guy would be well over 1,000 yards.
I would have loved to see what Ben Roethlisberger would have done with George Pickens, because Ben
young
Roethlisberger, I think, would have young Big Ben would have had the time of his life. Now, George is no Hines Ward. They're two different skill sets. George is more akin to AJ Green. That's always been the comp with George Pickens. But I don't think we're out of the realm here when we go out on a limb and say, I think George Pickens may be an even better pro than AJ Green. And that's saying something, because AJ Green's been in the pros for what? Almost 10 years now, if not 10 years.
Yeah, I think he's on the downside for sure.
Yeah, so I think Pickens, there's not much of a better situation for George Pickens if you figure out quarterback, like Dan said. I like Mitch Trubisky. Trubisky's a good guy. I think he's probably going to work out at some point. I think, Pitt may be the best spot for him coming from Chicago. I think that could work. I don't know if I like Kenny Pickett as much as I do Mitch Trubisky. That's more of a preface thing. And Rudes has a good point here. A few NFL teams have developed receivers at the level Pitt has. Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Chase Claypool. Jonathan also adds in Deontay Johnson, another young receiver they have on the roster. But shifting it more towards Georgia, because I know we're all here for Georgia. If you want to go find some Steelers talk, go hit up, I think it's si.com/Steelers country.
No, just stay here. We'll talk Steelers. If we get more people, we'll throw in a Steelers segment. We're fine. Come on, just stay here.
But George, in his preseason debut, not only is he making highlights in training camp and practice, he also pretty much showed out in his NFL preseason debut against the Seahawks the other week. Recorded 3 receptions for 43 yards and 1 touchdown. One of those viral plays was his signature pancake block on our opposing DB. And that kind of brought about Cole Wilcox wrote an amazing article this past week on SA Dogs Daily talking about, how a successful career for Pickens in the NFL could benefit Georgia in the long run. Because, Dan, he's a former five-star receiver. But, I think the biggest criticism against him is I think everyone's going to say he's probably could have done a lot more in Georgia than he did, or they wanted to see a lot more. So I think that's always going to be there. So this is time for Georgia to start building a new image of itself at receiver, because you haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver, at Georgia since what? Early, I forget even when Terrence Edward plays. I'm so young. I'm sorry, Dan.
Well, let me jump in here real quick before we get too deep in the weeds. So I was talking to a high school wide receiver right now. who's being recruited. Dad played in the NFL, and I asked him, "Would you play wide receiver, George?" He said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "Why?" He said, "They do not develop wide receivers." And I was like, "What about George Pickens?" He goes, "That's one." And he goes, "And he's going to have a better NFL career than he did in college." And it's an indictment on Georgia. Now, I don't believe that to be true. Okay. I think we all understand that there were things that prevented him from having the full success at Georgia. But in these high school kids' minds, it's that we don't develop. That's the biggest issue, is that we don't develop. We don't throw the ball enough. So I think whether George has success or not, it could be used as a weapon against Georgia one way or another, right? So if he doesn't have success, it's, well, Georgia can't produce a good wide receiver. If he does produce really well, then it's going to be, well, he didn't do that at Georgia. See, he's good despite having played at Georgia. So I think it's going to take a couple wide receivers and a real attitude shift, which I think Monken and side note, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but that Monken press conference is probably the most impressive thing I've seen in the last 10 years coming out of Georgia. Rick, all those people included. I was so blown away by how thoughtful he was and the amount of information that he was willing to give. I was blown away by Monken. I hope he stays forever. All right, getting back on track. It's going to take more receivers to come in here to produce, and Georgia put a couple in before the attitude shift changes. And with the young receiver that I was talking to, I asked him, I said, "Well, what if you went and you were the guy?" And it was a total hypothetical question. I'm not trying to recruit to Georgia. I'm not trying to boost her or whatever. It was just a conversation the two of us were having. I've known the kid since he was in diapers. So that's why we're having this conversation. And he's just like, there's other places I can go. And he mentioned Ohio State and just said that they have the best wide receiver coach, which I don't think any of us can argue right now in Heartline. And he said, I know that if I go there, I'm going to be developed really, really well. And that was that conversation. So it's going to take more than George Pickens. And like I said, if he's the only one in the next couple of years, they can weaponize George Pickens against us one way or another.
Absolutely. And I think, you bring up a good point. Obviously, yes, the way I would respond to that, Dan kind of hinted at it, is, I think George had a lot of bad timing. There's a lot of bad timing from the point, when George was at Georgia. A lot of bad timing. Obviously, he had had an in-team suspension that held him out of the first half of the LSU game, got in some trouble before the Georgia Tech game, couldn't play. I think it was maybe a quarter or maybe the first half of the Georgia Tech game. Then he got in that fight, missed the LSU game, all that. A lot of bad timing for George, at Georgia. But then you look at it further on, and it's, he didn't have a starting quarterback he didn't have the same starting quarterback from year to year. He had Jake Fromm to DeJuan Mathis to JT Daniels from DeJuan Mathis to Stetson Bennett to JT Daniels, all in one season. It's 3 quarterbacks in one season. You move forward, he gets hurt in the spring, going into his junior year. Has JT to start the year, but doesn't play. And then you go in, when he gets back, Stetson's the quarterback. Timing's all off. And I think that's, Georgia can't, yes, you can explain that to kids, but at the same time, you're going to have to find a way to explain to kids why a guy like Jermaine Burton transferred to Alabama. Your biggest rival, your biggest competitor going forward in the SEC is Alabama. Why did Jermaine Burton leave Georgia to go to Alabama? And when Jermaine Burton goes off for a 1,000-yard season, yeah, exactly. When he goes off and has a 1,000-yard season, that's going to be the question. So I hope, for Georgia's sake, I hope for Georgia's fans, for their sake, that somebody steps up and plays other than the tight ends. Because Brock Bowers having a good season, is that going to do any good for your receivers recruiting going forward?
And it actually hurts you more than it helps you, because now the monicum is shifting that we're a run and check down offense. So like I said, these other coaches are skilled at weaponizing what you do well to be a dagger, right? So, like I said, these coaches are going to find a way to make you look bad one way or another. And the biggest hurdle that we have right now is that these kids have, especially in certain position groups, have been told for so long what Georgia is and what Georgia is not. And it takes, with these kids, it takes time to change that narrative. And we are far removed from the days where a kid wanted the challenge to change the narrative by himself. And I always go back to basketball with this for a prime example. University of Georgia. And if you talk about the basketball team, the first person everybody says is Dominique Wilkins. But fair or unfair, that's the same thing they did with Herschel Walker for the longest time, right? Now we have added talent, that beside Herschel Walker, and we've got plenty of guys that you could name, but basketball really hasn't been able to do that. Anthony Edwards, right? Anthony Edwards took the challenge because he was confident in himself that he had the ability to be the number one pick regardless of where he went to school. He probably could have went to an HBCU, and no disrespect to an HBCU, but I'm just saying he could have went to an HBCU where they don't play the level of competition these other teams play and probably still been the number one pick, right? So, with a player like that, it kind of really didn't matter where he went to school. But he took that challenge. And unfortunately, Georgia was not able to capitalize it in basketball. Well, that's what Georgia's going to have to.
Taking the same challenge.
Who's that?
Travis Hunter, in football, the number one recruit the other year.
Right. And, if you don't have other people follow your lead, then there's not a whole lot you can do. Right. But
yeah,
you just have, it's going to be difficult to change the narrative. We're going to need a couple things to work out in our favor. And if you put that comment that Jonathan had up, no, the previous one, the multiple OCs, multiple quarterbacks, injuries, and a lot to overcome for a player. That's exactly right. Well said, Jonathan. That's it at the end of the day. There's a lot going on. If you're able to keep the continuity of Kirby and Monken and this coaching staff, if Searles is able to stay and build some consistency on that offensive line, I think, this is a great opportunity for Georgia to change that narrative, but it's going to take some time.
Absolutely. And I think you upgraded that receiver. Coaching wise, I think Brian McClendon is a heck of a coach. Everything we've heard about Brian McClendon is absolute good things. I mean, you go look back when he was coaching running backs at the University of Georgia, Dan, have you seen the absolute monsters that dude recruited at the University of Georgia back in the day during his first stop? If I'm not mistaken, he recruited Todd Gurley. He recruited Keith Marshall. He recruited Brian McClendon when he coached running backs in his first stint. He recruited all those guys. He recruited – he may have recruited Isaiah Crowell, if I'm not mistaken. But he recruited a bunch of them. A lot of those great running backs Georgia's had over the last 10, 15 years were probably recruited by Brian McClendon. So I think you got your guy. Now it's about rebuilding that narrative. And as Jonathan said here, Kirby Smart, it took Kirby Smart 6 years to change the narrative about his D-line. The program went 13 years without having a player drafted in the first round. Last one to do it was David Pollock before Trayvon Walker, Jordan Davis, and Devontae Wyatt. Absolutely smashed it out of the park. Had 3 guys go in the first round. And Dan, coming back to a point, I didn't think about this till now. The only team in last year's draft, this past April's draft, that took players from the same school, put in the same team, were the Packers, if I'm not mistaken. Devontae Wyatt
and the Eagles.
Quay Walker. And the Eagles. Yep. You're right.
You suck at this game, Harrison. No, but the Packers are the first. The Packers are the first team in NFL history to take 2 players from the same school in the first round. Maybe that's what you were thinking of.
Yeah. I'm not going to go back into that hole because I don't want to get Dan in that dark place again. So with that being said, guys, we will see you back next.
Before we dip out, it's not only Pickens. All of those dogs are showing out in all these NFL camps and NFL preseason. So it's not just 1 or 2 guys. And a lot of people are questioning the depth of this Georgia football team. They're all balling out. They're like every single one of them has got positive stuff coming out about them. So it's the whole collective is Georgia's. Everybody they put in this year is having a lot of success, and that's gonna roll over. And this recruiting class has really got me kind of sideways. I'm really shocked that we're not doing better than what we are. There's still plenty of time left, but listen. These guys that Georgia's putting out are ready-made. So, pass them up in the draft if you want to, Falcons.
Pass them up on your own risk. Here we go. Nothing better than Top Dog Talk and Jesus Chicken. All right, Robert, I'm gonna need you to hit me in my text messages. Maybe you can go hit me and Dan up in the DM. What is Jesus chicken? Dan, do you know?
Chick-fil-A, dude.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My 12-year-old self, that slipped right over my head. Jonathan with a comment. Robert, I went to go get a cookout sweet tea for the first time the other day, and they gave me unsweet. Oof. Yeah,
Oh,
Robert said it
that's a
best.
foul, bro.
They fumbled the bag. Well, with that being said, guys, you got a little nug of intel there from Jonathan and the DGD podcast. Make sure you go check out the DGD podcast. Check out the Classic City Sports podcast. I know Jeremiah saw it. I don't see him in the comments, but dude, Jonathan, do you too, man. When's the 4 Wide podcast coming? I'm calling you out right here, live on YouTube. Where's the 4 Wide podcast?
Hey, are we back on Tuesday? Let's tell the people.
We are back on Tuesday, guys. All right. I have nothing scheduled on Tuesday, other than class at 11 a.m. So you will see my face and Dan's beautiful self. Maybe Dan has a mustache next Tuesday. Dan, I'm putting the pressure back on you. Bring the mustache back.
Bro, who do you think
7:30 p.m.
I am? I'm not Tom Selleck. I can't grow a mustache in a week. I'm Irish, not Italian.
If you want to see if Dan can grow a mustache in a week, and well, actually a couple of days, come see us Tuesday at 7:30. Guys, like we always say, podcast comes out the next day, and actually we've been dropping it the night of. So whenever I get done uploading this back into the podcast host, it goes straight out for your listening pleasure. If you want to listen to us back on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to the video. Rate us 5 stars, only if we deserve it. But obviously, we want those 5 stars because, like any recruit out there, we want all the praise. Yeah, 5 stars, as Dan says, although I think Dan was giving you 10 stars. I don't know if that's happened, but make sure you give us 5 stars. Like, rate, subscribe. See you back next Tuesday at 7:30, guys. That was Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. We'll see you next week.